Senator Sampson.
Good evening, Madam President. I just have a few questions for the proponent. I guess the first thing I would just ask is I want to understand this bill entirely. I've been looking through it over the last several minutes and just trying to refamiliarize myself with it. I did look at it earlier today as well, knowing this might come up. And I guess the question I have is that the language begins by suggesting that healthcare providers are prohibited from doing all of this third-party financing and advertising for it, et cetera, et cetera. But then I notice there's another section that's simply about requiring disclosures. So which is it? Are these healthcare providers restricted entirely from offering this third-party financing and advertising for it, et cetera? Or can they do it as long as they provide the proper disclosure? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President, thank you for the question. That is an important clarification. They are not prohibited from offering these vehicles. It is just they have to, as you mentioned, there is a disclosure in here that they have to provide, and then there are restrictions around their marketing practices, but they are not in any way prohibited from offering these often valuable third-party financing vehicles. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much. All right, so that's good to know, and that certainly makes the bill a lot better from my perspective out of the gate, although there's a few other things I just want to clear up. How are they restricted from advertising compared to someone else that might offer a similar product to allow payment for the same services? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, thank you for the question. So the restrictions on the advertising include that they cannot co-brand the marketing of the product, so they couldn't include their logo on any branding for the third-party financing vehicle. They couldn't offer a link to a link or a quick response QR code to a website that had been co-branded. They cannot market while the consumer is under sedation. They cannot market while providing during the service, while providing the service. If it is available, they should bring them into a separate area than where the service was provided. They cannot receive compensation for offering these third-party vehicles. They cannot complete the application on behalf of the consumer. They cannot submit the application for the consumer. And then others are around, those are the marketing, and then other restrictions are around, they can't charge that third-party vehicle before the service is provided, or if it's used for an ancillary product, they have to have a return policy regarding that ancillary product. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. That's a bit of a mixed bag. I can see certainly restricting someone from marketing a product or having someone sign a contract when their patient is under sedation. Okay, I will go for that one. You got me. I think that's a good idea. We should restrict that from happening. But I think that that's already restricted under most contract law, that the parties have to be of clear and sound mind when they enter a contract. You can't be sedated or intoxicated or anything like that. So the other items I'm a little curious about, because it seems to me in most other fields, like for example, if I walk into a car dealer to buy a car, the car dealer is not going to finance it for me necessarily, although that does happen too. But they're going to have an arrangement with some finance. In fact, they're going to bring me to some guy whose job is in the car dealer to go through all these different loan products and help sell them to me. And they also make money on that process. So why is it okay for a car dealer and not for somebody who's trying to get treatment for their ailing pet? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President. That's first, a good point that it is most likely already illegal to offer a service to someone when they're under sedation. We are just clarifying that here. I think that the other point I will make is that there are some professional services where you're not allowed to receive a commission for offering that or recommending that. So it's just in line that because it is a professional service, I think that offering that imprimatur of the doctor or the veterinarian to the third-party service, making it clear that it's not from that trusted professional, but rather a third party which they're making information available about for the convenience of the consumer. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate the gentleman and his response, although it doesn't really answer my question about why, in this case, it's different than a car dealer, for example. I understand some professions maybe an example might be helpful, and what the division is. What is the defining characteristic between what we're referring to here, which are healthcare and veterinary providers, and someone who's selling a product like an automobile or a boat or something like that? Through you.
Senator Maroney.
Through you, I think the difference is, I guess, the professional licensure that the doctor or the veterinarian would have working with the professional versus when you go into a car dealer, you're expecting to have financing of some sort and you're purchasing a product. So I think it's that differential in the expectation when you're going in. And again, having that professional put their brand on it is different than just offering it so that it's clearer to the patient or the consumer that this is an individual, a third party. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate the answer, and I mean no disrespect, but it seems like it's simply an opinion that some types of products and services should have the ability to have the practitioner offer a financing product and some should not. I didn't hear anything that's really a distinction that should say that some should and should not. And my concern here is, like it often is in this chamber, which is that we're talking about injecting our own opinions into decisions that, in my view, ought to be rightfully made by the citizens that we are respecting and representing here in this chamber. And again, I mean, I assume that this bill is here before us because of something that happened. I assume that there's something that happened in the world and somebody said, well, we now have to jump in and start regulating this because we have to protect people. Am I right about that, Madam President?
Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President, that is correct. There have been incidences of harm and people who came to testify to that effect. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So is it a situation where in every particular case that someone has managed to get financing from their veterinarian about a treatment for their ailing dog, for example, that they've been taken advantage of, or some other negative impact occurred as a result? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President. Thank you for the question. 80% of the people who have used these end up paying off before there's any interest. But one of the things that was brought to our attention is that oftentimes when they don't pay off the entire amount, they don't realize that if you do not pay off the entire amount, the interest on the whole amount was due from the beginning. And so they receive a much larger bill than they had anticipated. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. But before anyone is given any sort of financing agreement, wouldn't it be incumbent upon the parties of the contract to know the terms? And in order for it to be enforceable, wouldn't the person that was obtaining the financing have to sign something expressing what the terms are and have to acknowledge that with a signature at the very least? Through you.
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President. Thank you for that question because it allows me to actually add some context to one of my previous answers. That, like the good senator, I also believe in the free markets, but when it comes to health care and veterinary care, we're often not going to price shop. If you're hurt, you go to the closest doctor. If your pet is hurt, you go to the closest veterinarian. You're not able to effectively compete the prices. And so that is why it often, in addition to that, is often an emotional decision. And so since you need that care at that time and you need a way to fund that care, sometimes you aren't in that proper state of mind to actually look through those disclosures, or you may just take whatever is offered to you because you know you want to provide that service to your pet or for your loved one. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate the good gentleman and his comments, but basically what he is suggesting is that consumers are too stupid to figure it out for themselves, and they need the majority party here in Hartford to tell them how to live their lives and what loans they should be able to get and whether or not they're making an emotional decision, etc. Now, I get it, and I'm completely sympathetic to the idea that we want to protect consumers, But when you start to protect consumers by denying their individual freedom to engage in commerce or make a decision, then you're not helping them anymore. Denying people their rights to make their own decisions is not helping. I can't say that enough in this circle. It's got to sink in at some point. Our job, we are elected by people back home who send us here to represent them. And the one thing that I will promise all of my constituents is I will not come up here and vote to take away a decision that you can make for yourself. And that's what we do all the time. And this bill takes away the right of people to make their own decisions. And now, the good chairman of the General Law Committee makes a lot of very strong points, and I understand the consumer protection avenues that we're traveling down, but let me just throw a few things out there. Suppose that you've got your dog at 2 a.m. in front of an emergency vet, and you've got to make an agreement about how to get treatment for this dog. If this ability for that doctor to be able to charge and produce an agreement for repayment of that treatment goes away, you might not be in a situation to price shop or anything else. And that denial of your individual liberty to engage in that transaction being denied under state law is a problem for me. So I get it. And I understand, you know, when people look at these bills, people often go both ways. Yes, please, Senator, take my rights away because it's the best thing to do. I said the same thing when we were passing the law that said that you couldn't buy cigarettes until you were 21 years of age, which struck me as completely odd because you could vote when you're 18. Okay? You can serve in the legislature when you're 18. So you can come up here and vote on whether or not you can take other people's rights away. But you want to vote for other people who will tell you what you can and cannot do. It makes no sense to me. And I just want to remind my colleagues, our job is not to be taking people's rights from them. So if the problem is that you had some criminal activity, or you had some shady deals go down, or you were concerned that people are being taken advantage of, then let's create a mechanism to enforce the changes to that problem. To require some sort of standard by which people that offer these products have to abide by. But to deny the existence of financial products being offered by certain entities, to me, is overkill. And it is violating the rights of the people we represent. Let me just go to the one thing that really stood out and is the reason why I decided to get up on this bill altogether. And that's because, if I'm correct, through you, Madam President, there is a section in here that gives the sole ability to enforce this statute to the Attorney General. Am I correct about that?
Thank you, Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President, that is correct. A violation of this is a violation of the Connecticut Uniform Trade Practices Act, and it is to solely be enforced by the Attorney General. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
It's like 2 out of 3 bills that come before this chamber are giving the Attorney General more power. Now, the Attorney General is a great guy, and God bless him for what he does every day, and I'm sure he's looking out for consumers a large part of that time, and I know he's got a good staff and all that. But come on now. Why are we eliminating the ability for civil litigation? For me, that's the mechanism here that would prevent the very calamities that this bill is being designed to thwart, right? Allow people to sue their veterinarian who ripped them off because they didn't disclose every detail of the financial transaction. But no, we're taking that away, and we're going to leave it up to the arbitrary discretion of the Attorney General's office? Do they have enough staff to handle every time something like this happens? Are people on the street even going to be aware of such a statute? Are even the healthcare and veterinarian providers that are out there in the world going to even be aware of this statute? I feel like we're creating a lot of pitfalls. Because I got to tell you, when I get up in the morning as a free American citizen I kind of have in my head what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. And I would suggest that if I want to engage in some sort of voluntary contract with my veterinarian about how I'm going to pay a bill, as a free person, I should be able to make that decision. That's what I think. So I don't like hearing that, oh, the state just passed a law that you can't do that anymore, Senator Sampson. You do not have the right to use your own brain. You're too stupid. We've decided for you. So that's frustrating. And then when I find out that not only do I not have the right to engage in that activity anymore, if there is any activity that is suspect, there's one guy, an elected person, a partisan entity, who gets to decide who he's going to enforce the law against. Are there any standards by which the enforcement would occur or not occur in this bill? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Maroney.
Through you, the enforcement is done through the Uniform Trade Practices Act, so the standards are established in that portion of the statutes. Through you.
Thank you. Does the Attorney General have
Thank you, Senator Sampson.
I'm sorry. Through you, Madam President, does the Attorney General have discretion on who to prosecute and who he does not? Through you.
Senator Maroney.
Through you, Madam President, it says it shall constitute an unfair or deceptive trade practice, and it shall be enforced solely by.
Thank you.
So it shall be enforced by the Attorney General. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Maroney. Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. And I read the same thing that the good chairman did, except that I don't know that that actually means that he has got to force it. It just says that if he does enforce it, it shall be enforced by the Attorney General, not the Attorney General shall enforce. It's kind of the opposite kind of way it's worded. I think that what it means is that the Attorney General's office would decide. And again, I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I mean, we often have criminal prosecutions that are decided by whether or not the prosecutor thinks they have a legitimate case or it rises to the level of a prosecution. So that's fine. But it is very concerning when you empower an elected person, a partisan entity, to have this decision-making power about arbitrary enforcement of laws, especially when you have deprived the citizens of Connecticut not only of their right to engage in a certain amount of commerce, but also to make a claim and have a cause of action if they've been wronged. And this bill does both of those things. So while this bill on its surface sounds like it's a good consumer protection bill, I believe this bill overreaches by denying individuals in this state, free citizens who get up in the morning and believe they have the right to do certain things, and it takes away their right to do some of those things that a lot of us would think as a matter of course and would never even assume there'd be a restriction on because there's no actual benefit to the state. And I would just further add that the fact that we shouldn't do this bill, we should vote against this bill, and we should go back to the drawing board, and next year what we ought to do is bring another bill forward to set up some standards to determine exactly how we're going to make sure that people that engage in this free business activity do it within the confines of civility and respect, and that there's a mechanism for people that are wronged to be able to have justice other than the arbitrary decision-making of the Attorney General. That's my recommendation. Please run with it. I'll be a no today.
Thank you. Will you remark further? Will you remark further? If not, the machine is open. Have all the senators voted? Have all the senators voted? The machine is locked. Mr. Clerk, give us the tally if you would, please, sir.
House Bill 5127, total non-voting 34, total voting yea 32, total voting nay 2, absent not voting 2.
Legislation passes. Senator